The house sat quiet on the curve of Larkspur Lane, wrapped in heat and wild growth. Kudzu had crept up the white siding, and the wooden porch sagged like it, too, had grown tired of waiting. Charmaine arrived first, her black SUV crunching gravel as she pulled into the driveway. She stepped out in heels too high for country ground and glanced around with a face that didn't show much. Not surprise, not sadness. Just calculation. "Same as we left it," she muttered. Though that wasn't true. The paint had peeled. The shutters hung crooked. The garden, once the pride of Loretta Briggs, their mother, was half swallowed by weeds and silence. Charmaine opened the trunk, took out her suitcase, and walked toward the front door with clipped precision. Danielle was already inside. "You're late," she said flatly, arms crossed. "I'm early," Charmaine replied. "The will reading's not until 3. I've been here since 6 this morning. Cleaning." Charmaine looked around. "Doesn't show." Danielle didn't bite. She just turned and walked into the kitchen. Charmaine hesitated in the doorway, her eyes scanning every frame, every vase, every threadbare doily still in its place. It had been 12 years since she last walked these floors. 12 years since their mother said, "You think leaving makes you better, but it just makes you lonely." Now Loretta was gone, and Charmaine was back, but not to mourn, to collect what was left. Naomi showed up last. She drove a rusted blue van that coughed as it parked. Her jeans were dusty, her hair wild, her eyes behind large round sunglasses. She didn't knock, just stepped inside, the screen door creaking behind her. Charmaine blinked. "You actually came." Naomi shrugged. "Mama died. Figured it'd be rude not to." Danielle gave her a long look. "Thought you were off painting sunsets in Arizona." "I was," Naomi said. "Ran out of paint." Charmaine rolled her eyes. Danielle walked out of the room. The 3 of them stood in the living room, surrounded by old furniture and unfinished conversations. On the wall above the fireplace hung a faded photograph of Loretta in her garden, holding a basket of tomatoes, eyes bright, arms freckled with sun. Naomi looked at it quietly. She really loved that garden. Charmaine adjusted the collar of her blouse. She loved pretending we were happy. Danielle came back in with 3 glasses of sweet tea, and no smile. "I made the garden bed bloom again last year," she said. She smiled for the first time in months. No one responded. At 3 p.m. the lawyer arrived. Mr. Hall was a short man with a briefcase that squeaked when it opened. He didn't sit, just unfolded a small stack of papers and cleared his throat. "Per the last will and testament of Loretta May Briggs," he began, "the following assets are to be distributed accordingly." The sisters leaned in. He read off small things first, jewelry, china, photographs. Then he paused, glancing up. "And the property, the house and the 5 acres it sits on, including the garden and all attached structures, shall be given to—" A beat. "Danielle Briggs." Silence. Naomi blinked. Charmaine sat still. Danielle's hand trembled on her glass. Mr. Hall cleared his throat again and added, "There is also a journal, sealed, to be opened by the 3 of you together." Loretta's instruction was clear. Let them read it where the flowers used to bloom. Later, they sat outside on 3 rusted lawn chairs, facing what remained of the garden. Tomato cages leaned like drunk old men. The roses had choked beneath weeds. One bright marigold pushed through a crack in the fence. Danielle held the journal in her lap. The cover was soft brown leather, edges curled with time. A ribbon tied it shut. "You open it," Danielle said, handing it to Naomi. Naomi looked at Charmaine. Charmaine nodded. So Naomi untied the ribbon and opened the first page. Loretta's handwriting was careful and slanted. "To my daughters, the ones I birthed and the ones I failed to know. If you are reading this, then the soil is still warm, and maybe your hearts are too." Naomi kept reading aloud. Each page was a memory, a confession, a piece of truth Loretta had never spoken when alive. She wrote of the garden as her church, of how she had loved them all, but not equally, not always, of the days she resented their needs, of the days she didn't feel like a mother at all. She wrote about their father, who left early and left scars, about the nights she cried behind closed doors, about how Danielle was the one who stayed, who cleaned her when she got sick, who planted lavender when the chemo made her nauseous. Danielle, the journal said, you are the root. I gave you the land because you knew what to do with it, when to water, when to let it rest. That garden didn't die because of neglect. It died because it carried my shame, and now it's yours to reclaim. Naomi wiped her face. Damn. Charmaine stood suddenly. This is what she wanted. A guilt trip in cursive. Naomi looked at her. She was honest. That's something. Danielle just sat still, staring at the marigold. No one said a word for a long time. The day after the will reading, the air hung thick with humidity and unspoken words. Birds chirped as if nothing had shifted, but inside the house on Larkspur Lane everything had. Charmaine sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her jaw clenched tight. Legal documents blinked on the screen. Squatters' rights don't apply when it's family, she muttered. But there's got to be a clause, something. Across the room, Danielle stood at the sink, washing dishes that didn't need it. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like scrubbing helped her hold in the storm. Naomi came down the stairs barefoot, holding a mug of coffee with both hands like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Charmaine didn't look up. You both just okay with this? Naomi sipped. With what? With her giving Danielle everything. Danielle turned around. She gave me responsibility, Charmaine, not fortune. Charmaine narrowed her eyes. You got 5 acres of land. You know what that's worth. Naomi raised a hand. She also got Mama's cancer, and her slow death. You didn't call for 4 months, Charmaine. Charmaine stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. I had work. You always have work. And you always have excuses, Naomi, disappearing every time things get hard. Danielle dried her hands on a towel. Y'all want to fight or you want to fix this? The room went quiet. Outside, the garden waited. Danielle knelt by the old herb bed and pulled up dead roots. The soil underneath was still rich, dark and soft, the way Loretta had always liked it. Naomi appeared with a shovel. Need help? Danielle nodded once. They worked in silence, the kind that was born from tiredness, not anger. After a while, Naomi asked, Did you ask her for the land? Danielle shook her head. Never wanted it, but I couldn't leave her alone. I would have come if she'd asked. Danielle glanced over. Would you? Naomi didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Naomi wandered toward the old garden shed, the one Loretta had called her sanctuary. The door was stuck, swollen with weather and time. She pushed hard until it creaked open. Dust floated in sunbeams like memories. Inside, a rusted watering can, bags of forgotten seeds, a small trunk covered with a blanket. She knelt, heart thrumming, and opened it. Inside, wrapped in linen, were stacks of letters, some addressed, some not, all written in Loretta's hand. She flipped through them. To Charmaine, to Naomi, to a man named Calvin Rivers. Her eyes widened. Calvin was their father's name. Back at the house, Charmaine was on the phone with a real estate agent. I'm entitled to contest the will. It's not about money, it's about principle. She paused. I don't care if she's my sister. It's not fair. She turned to see Naomi standing in the doorway, holding a handful of letters. You might want to hang up. Charmaine frowned. Why? Naomi tossed the letters on the table. Because this isn't about fairness. It's about truth. And Mama's truth was messy. Charmaine picked one up and read the name. Calvin Rivers. She wrote him. Naomi nodded. A lot. Danielle entered, wiping sweat from her neck. Who? Naomi looked at her. Our father. Charmaine scoffed. He left. Why write him anything? Naomi opened one of the letters. Read aloud. I hated you for leaving, but I hated myself more for staying quiet. The girls grew up wondering why you vanished, and I let them. I let them believe it was your fault alone. Naomi paused. I pushed you out, Calvin. After that night. You know which one. You raised your hand to me, and I decided we were done. But I couldn't tell the girls. I needed them to think I was strong, not scared. Danielle sat slowly. Naomi looked up. We didn't lose him to abandonment. Mama pushed him out to protect us. Charmaine's voice was low, and we hated him for it. Danielle closed her eyes, and we hated her for staying. That night, the three sisters sat in the garden with wine in paper cups and the letters between them. A soft breeze moved through the overgrown hedges. Maybe she didn't leave us a fortune, Naomi said, but she left us the truth. Danielle nodded. She left us the garden, too. That's something. Charmaine looked down at her feet. I'm sorry I didn't come around more. Danielle touched her hand. Me too. Naomi raised her cup. To Mama. Messy, beautiful, complicated Mama. They clinked their paper cups, and for the first time in years, they didn't feel like strangers. The sun broke through the clouds 2 days later, scattering light across the garden like confetti. For the first time in years, the backyard didn't feel heavy. The air was still thick, but not with silence. Now it held movement, laughter, even the rustle of possibility. Danielle had started clearing the rows near the fence, where their mother once grew snap peas and okra. Naomi had sorted through seed packets with faded handwriting, and Charmaine, surprisingly, had picked up a hoe and asked, Is this the right way to turn soil? Danielle had stared at her, then nodded. Close enough. They worked side by side that morning, slowly without rhythm, but together. The ground was hard in places, loose in others. Much like them, Naomi found herself humming while pulling weeds. Charmaine stayed focused, not used to dirt under her nails, but accepting it. Danielle dug deep into an old garden bed, feeling something shift under her spade. She knelt and pulled up a weathered wooden box about the size of a shoebox, sealed with a rusted metal latch. What's that? Naomi asked, stepping over. Don't know, Danielle whispered. Charmaine wiped it clean with her sleeve. Burned into the top was a single word. Lily. Inside the house, they placed the box on the kitchen table. Danielle opened it carefully. Inside, a dried lily flower, crumbling but still shaped like Grace. A faded photograph of a young Loretta, holding a baby none of them recognized, and a sealed envelope marked only with a letter. D. Charmaine frowned. That's not for any of us. Naomi picked up the photo. She's holding a boy. Danielle's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside, the letter read, Dear Delilah, if you're reading this, you found what I couldn't say while alive. I had a son before I had any of you. I named him David, but I was only 17. I wasn't ready, and my folks made the decision for me. They sent him away. I wasn't allowed to hold him after the first week. I never told y'all, not because I didn't love you, but because I was ashamed, and I thought if I buried it deep enough, maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. But I kept this box, and I kept that lily. It grew in the garden the spring I gave him away. It was the only thing that bloomed right, and I thought maybe one day someone would find him, or at least forgive me. Don't hate me for hiding this. Just understand I was trying to survive the best way I knew how. Love, Mama. The room fell into a stunned hush. Charmaine sat down slowly. She had a child before us? Danielle couldn't speak. Naomi whispered, Delilah, wasn't that Mama's sister? The one who died in the fire. Danielle nodded. Maybe she wrote it before she decided which one of us it would go to. Charmaine stood up and paced. So there's a man out there, a brother we never knew. What are we supposed to do with that? Nothing, Danielle said. Not yet. Naomi held the photo in her lap, staring at their mother's face, softer, younger, full of fear and love all at once. She was just a girl, Naomi said, and they took her baby. Charmaine rubbed her temples. What kind of family hides something like that? Danielle answered quietly, the kind that's still learning how to love out loud. That night they didn't talk much, but each sister sat with her own thoughts. Danielle watered the soil and whispered an apology into the ground. Naomi stared at the stars and wondered what it would feel like to meet someone who shared her blood but not her memory. Charmaine sat on the porch with her laptop closed for once. She was no longer searching for legal ways to contest the will. She was searching for a man named David, born in 1973 in Jackson, Mississippi. The next morning, Naomi found Danielle in the garden, standing still among the empty rows. I had a dream, Danielle said without turning around. Mama was sitting right there in her green chair, holding a lily in her lap, smiling. Naomi touched her sister's arm. Maybe she's finally resting. Danielle nodded slowly. I think I'm ready to keep this place. Naomi smiled. Good, because I already ordered seeds. Danielle laughed an actual laugh, and for the first time the garden answered back with a breeze that didn't sting. A week later, the sisters stayed one day longer than planned. The garden, once brittle and ghosted with grief, had begun to take shape again, not neatly, not perfectly, but with stubborn life. Tomato vines twined upward from new cages. Marigolds flared orange along the fence line. Lavender and mint pushed up through softened earth, carrying a scent that lingered on skin and in memory. Charmaine canceled a week of meetings. Naomi unpacked her travel bag and didn't repack it. Danielle made fresh biscuits every morning, the kind Mama used to make on slow Saturdays. They weren't the same women who had walked through that door days earlier. They had learned to stay. On a warm Sunday, the screen door creaked open as Danielle stepped onto the porch. A car idled at the edge of the drive, not a local car. Rental plates. A man stepped out. Mid-40s. Tall. Salt and pepper beard. Eyes like Loretta's, not in color but in depth. David. He stood still, holding a folded letter in his hand, the one Charmaine had mailed after finding his name in county records. Danielle walked down the steps. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then he said softly, I'm not here to take anything. Danielle replied, That's good, because there's nothing left to take, only things left to grow. They sat at the Thing for the community. Charmaine raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to stay here? I'm sure I don't want to keep running. Naomi leaned back in her chair. Then I'm staying too. For a while. Charmaine looked at the stars. You'll need someone to handle the books. Danielle smiled. Then I guess we're doing this. Weeks passed, then months. Spring turned to early summer, and the garden began to bloom with intention. Neighborhood kids came to help plant beans and pick tomatoes.